All right, good day, everybody. This is Emar Platoon. Welcome to a quick edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. Hope all of you are doing well out there. We're broadcasting this live on January 6th, 2021. Hope all is well in the world with you. We're doing pretty good here in Atlanta, Georgia, just getting through the week. It's a Wednesday, so that means got to grind and work our way through the week like all of you out there listening. But thanks for giving us a chance. And we hope to have a good show for you and discuss some topics that are going to bring some interest to you and to myself because I'm the one talking about it. As always, want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net. That's where you can find all of our pressers, interviews, and previous shows. Very excited what we've done over the past week or so. We've got some good interviews with Nell Fortner, head coach of Georgia Tech women's basketball. We spoke yesterday with Gene Hill, the head coach of Georgia State women's basketball. We also brought back the Verbal Submission podcast, which is our podcast focused on combat sports. I did a full preview of Wrestle Kingdom 15 from New Japan Pro Wrestling. After I record this show, maybe later on today or tomorrow, I'm going to do a recap of that show. And I have to admit, listen to the show. I got every prediction right for the entire show. I predicted all the matches correctly. Now, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, because if you can predict all the matches, that usually brings less excitement. But I thought it was a very good show, and I thought that it was well executed. I'll delve deeper into specifics when we do our show. But I predicted the entire 2 nights of wrestling cards correctly. Who would win from the championship matches, even down to some of the non-title matches. So I'm very proud of myself in that regard. But that show is on our site, and make sure you give that a listen. Also go to our Facebook page, The Sports Inquirer, and that'll give you a good chance to check out everything that we're doing. And finally, subscribe to our YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes page under The Sports Inquirer to get all of our previous shows, like the that you're going to hear later on, part like this one, and our future shows that we post on the site all throughout our entire tenure. On today's broadcast, we're going to go into the NFL with the Gridiron Blitz, have some thoughts in the world of the National Football League, Technical State of Georgia Athletics. We'll hear that full interview from Gene Hill from Georgia State women's basketball. And then finally, the miscellaneous department, we may delve into other news and notes in the world of sports. But let's go to the Gridiron Blitz. Before we get to the playoffs, which are taking place later on this week, this upcoming weekend, thoughts on some hirings and firings throughout the league and the Eagles quarterback situation. I think we saw there were really no surprises as far as the hirings and firings. If you look throughout the entire league, some teams like the Atlanta Falcons and Detroit Lions, Houston Texans fired their head coaches and general managers in season. So we were well aware of those moves. You look at the Jets and Jacksonville, the team with the 2 worst records in the NFL. You had a feeling that Adam Gase was not going to stick around, even though the Jets did end up winning 2 games this season and ended the year on playing much better than they did in the beginning of the season. But the time was over for him, and just the Jets are going to do a full rebuild. Jacksonville, even though Doug Marrone did have the Jaguars in the AFC Championship game as recently as 3 years ago, the time had worn down for him there. They finished with the worst record in the NFL, have the number 1 overall pick. So you thought that would happen. Anthony Lynn in I keep saying San Diego, Los Angeles Chargers. They have the thing about them is that you would think that maybe give him more time, but they lost so many close games this year. The good part about them, when we get to these hirings that they could potentially make, they have a franchise quarterback. It looks like there's some talent on that roster, but there's too many close losses over the past few years. Same thing with Dan Quinn here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we're based. Even though Quinn led the team to a Super Bowl appearance a few years ago, just inconsistencies, especially losing close games and blowing big leads. And the Chargers and the Falcons were in that same boat. You have Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks. You look at the roster, you have Pro Bowl talent on both sides of the ball, yet you're losing all these close games. What's going on? And him being fired was not necessarily surprising. I was very intrigued because there's always one, and I was talking with a buddy of mine, Hunter, that I consult with, and we were discussing the hirings and firings that we were going to see because this was on Saturday this past weekend before the end of the regular season in the NFL. And I said there's always a surprise. There's always one. There still might be one. You never know. But I was looking at Philadelphia, and looking at Minnesota, and I was looking at Chicago. Now the Bears end up winning their game, and they're in the playoffs. But I thought if they lost that, if they did not find a way into the postseason, Nagy would be, even if they won 7, 8 games, it's a very weird situation in Chicago with just the handling of the quarterback carousel with Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. Have they been underachieving? Have they overachieved? They're kind of in the middle, so you don't know with them. Philadelphia, and we'll get to the quarterback situation in later on in the show. There's a lot of ascension going on in that franchise, and especially with the handling of that last regular season game with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, what to do about go about the quarterback spot. I didn't think Peterson would get fired necessarily because he still won the Super Bowl a few years ago, and he's a good coach. He's led them to multiple playoff appearances. But I thought that maybe the ownership and the coach would be maybe at an impasse and maybe a voluntary leaving. It looks like that's not going to happen, which is he should keep his job. I wasn't mad at that at all. But I thought that you never know. It's the NFL. People go sideways on certain stuff. And then Minnesota looks like Zimmer is going to keep his job. But the thing about the Vikings are they're in NFL purgatory. They're not bad enough to have a top 5 pick in the NFL draft to accumulate top flight talent, yet they're not good enough to make the playoffs. And you have a quarterback who's towards the end of his contract. They traded away their top receiver to Buffalo in Diggs, and you see what he's done there. They're just an average franchise. And as I said, with Zimmer, if you want to win 7 to 9 games a year, maybe get to 10 every 2 3 years, he can do that for you. But is he a championship caliber head coach? And that's the question that I thought that the Vikings would maybe answer by making a coaching change in this situation. But it looks like he's going to stay, and we'll see what happens there. But I was just very interested to see if that would be one of those new spots for a new head coach. Going to the Philadelphia situation with the Eagles, I think that going with Jalen Hurts was a fair move at the time that they made it. Carson Wentz was playing as one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Look at the numbers, the turnovers, the lack of wins. He had all together and all statistics. He was playing at least bottom 10 as far as quarterbacks go. We know about the salary and all the money he's owed. In essence, if they release him today, I mean, you're looking at probably $40 to $50 million of dead cap space on your deal. And there's no team in the NFL that's going to outright release a player for that, especially if they've invested so much money in him. So what they did is they went with Jalen Hurts to see what they could get from him, the second round pick from last draft, the rookie quarterback from Oklahoma. He had his ups and downs, had some really good games, some not so good games. But you want to see what you have in him if you make a move in the offseason with Carson Wentz. Then Doug Peterson got cute. They're playing Washington this past week. They're not in the playoff picture, so they're eliminated from the postseason going into that Sunday night game. They're tied in that contest against Washington in late in the second half. And he decides to pull Jalen Hurts and bring in the third string quarterback. Well, technically, he's a second string quarterback because Carson Wentz did not even dress. He was not even activated. Sure enough, multiple turnovers, and the Eagles end up losing that contest. You have the Joe Judge, the head coach of the New York Giants, questioning the integrity of the Eagles, integrity of the league, because if Philadelphia won that contest, the New York Giants would be the NFC East champions and be in the postseason instead of Washington. Washington won that contest. They're now in the playoffs. Now you're hearing players come out and openly say that they were confused by the move and did not know why that decision was made. It's a lot going on there with Philadelphia. You hear Carson Wentz and his agents say that they want to get they Wentz wants to get traded. You hear that the bridge is burned pretty much between Peterson and Wentz. Now the management may make an interesting move there and fire Peterson. I don't think they're going to do that, but I find it very surprising if you're going to see Wentz and Peterson on the same page by next season. Maybe they take it some time off. They realize they need each other. They're better together than apart. Now Peterson would be able to find an NFL job if he does get released. So I wouldn't be an issue there. And I think Wentz would find a position as well. You don't think that the uh, the New England Patriots wouldn't look at Wentz as an intriguing prospect? I don't. I think Stafford and Detroit might be on borrowed time. Atlanta with Matt Ryan, but now Atlanta may be a different case because I think they're going to draft a quarterback in their top five. And we'll have plenty of draft talk over the next few months. But Atlanta with the fourth overall pick, I think they're going to probably look at a quarterback spot more likely than not. So that would make sense to bring Wentz in. But so I think outside of Jacksonville and the Jets. Maybe they like Wentz. They're not so. Well, Trevor Lawrence is go number one overall to Jacksonville. I think that's not guaranteed, but we could pretty much put that down as almost solid granite reality. But what if Jacksonville wants to go? No, not the Jets. They want to go with Wentz and go a different route. So Wentz will have options and choices in his spots. But I think overall, in the end, you're not going to have Peterson and Wentz together. And I think Wentz, they're going to move on from him. But just a very odd situation, just that how that's all developed. And as far as the playoffs go, I'll give a quick rundown of the playoff games you're going to see in the wild card round. Indianapolis goes to Buffalo. I think that's going to be a very tough contest for the Bills. I mean, a tough contest for the Colts to win. Losing that last second field goal to Tennessee, they lost the division. Now they have to go early game to Buffalo, team that's very hot right now. Maybe the best threat to Kansas City in the AFC. I just don't. I mean, the Colts could win the game. They could run the ball, control it. Jonathan Taylor has emerged as maybe the top rookie running back in this past draft. You look at him. That's a very intriguing concept if they can get the ball running. I just think Phillip Rivers is turnover prone. Buffalo is playing hot right now. I think the Bills can roll in this contest. You got the Los Angeles Rams at Seattle, divisional game, coin flip. I think that Jared Goff had the thumb surgery. They're saying that he's going to play he may be available. If not, they may go with the backup that was able to win the contest this past week at home against Arizona. That's I have to really reevaluate that one. You would think the home team of Seattle, maybe better quarterback, slightly better defense. Because you look at the numbers, the Seahawks have played very well over the past few games on defensive end. You gotta say that the Seahawks have a slight edge, but that's a coin flip. And then finally, to wrap up Saturday's action, Tampa Bay at Washington. Look, Washington's a fun story. With Alex Smith, comeback player of the decade. We all know about his broken leg, how he's overcome that. Ron Rivera, head coach, battling cancer literally through this season and working his way onto the sideline. Chase Young, maybe probably your defensive rookie of the year, got a fun front seven for Washington to contend with Tampa. And then Tampa comes in a little bit wounded. And we don't know what Mike Evans. They say I don't think he has a sprained knee or a hyperextended knee. That's the report we got so far. We don't know if he'll be available for this contest. But Tampa comes in still very, very strong. We see Tom Brady 40 plus touchdowns for the second time in his career, for the second team in his career. Only Peyton Manning's done that. Obviously, Manning did that with the Colts and the Broncos. Tom Brady 40 plus touchdowns with the Patriots, obviously, and now Tampa Bay. So he comes in playing very well. Antonio Brown had a big day in the regular season finale against Atlanta. So he's offensively getting himself involved. Several touchdown catches. Rojo Jones, the running back for Tampa, also getting himself acclimated into the offense. Saw Godwin make a few catches against Atlanta. Now Atlanta's a struggling franchise. We all know this, but still, you get all those offensive guys on the same page. That was a very good sign. I think Washington does play defense well. They can limit Tampa in their offensive opportunities, but I don't like Washington's offense at all against Tampa's defense. I think that's where if Washington may not get to 17 points, they're just offensively challenged in many, many ways. And I think to beat Tampa, you got to get into the 20s. And I don't see Washington being able to do that offensively. As I said, with Alex Smith, who that's a very good story, but that offense is a lot just not, they don't produce enough points, honestly, in the end. And I think that's what you're going to see there. And then Sunday, we have three matchups. Baltimore goes to Tennessee for their first round contest. This is a redemption time for Lamar Jackson. He's accomplished all the regular season accolades. He had a quietly one of the better seasons you can think of. And I think and we've talked about this before. I think he's underappreciated because we saw last year the MVP unanimously named MVP of the league, and all the accolades, the rushing and passing touchdown combinations in his second year. But we got to see it in the postseason. As a rookie, he lost to the Chargers. Last year, they lost in a very bad way at home to Tennessee, where Lamar Jackson, I know he had, I think, 400 plus total yards, but Baltimore was never in that contest. So you add all that up, we've seen Lamar Jackson have success in the regular season. What is he going to do in the postseason? And he goes in on the road against a Tennessee team that with Derrick Henry 2,000 plus yards rushing, very big accolades for him. But and Ryan Tannehill as well, a guy who kind of similar to Jackson, very quietly has had a very good year. Tennessee, I think because they do it through the run, obviously with a 2,000-yard rusher. They have one of the top 2-3 offenses in the entire NFL. You would think, hey, what about Kansas City? They throw for a bunch of yards. And what about New Orleans? They like to throw it a lot. And even Tampa, I mentioned with Tom Brady, 40 plus touchdown passes. You would think those offenses in Buffalo, Josh Allen with 38 or 39 combined touchdowns rushing and passing, those guys would be the best offenses in the league. Tennessee is right there with them. And I think this is the type of game. And Baltimore's defense is okay, but I think it's going to be Derrick Henry's going to run the ball a lot of ball control. I think Lamar Jackson, it's a team that this will be the quickest game because both teams like to run the ball a lot. But I think ultimately Tennessee is that team that's going to find a way to run the ball and win a very close contest and get the victory. Chicago at New Orleans. I think that the Bears come in a very average team. I watched that game against Green Bay. When both teams had something to play for. Was not impressed at all by the Bears. I think New Orleans, they're supposed to get Alvin Kamara back. He was in COVID uh, isolation, but he's back. You add that up with Michael Thomas. He looks like he's going to try to work his way back into the lineup. I think New Orleans rolls in this contest. Finally, Pittsburgh at host Cleveland in the nightcap on Sunday. I like Pittsburgh to win this contest, and I know Cleveland beat them last week at home to secure a playoff spot. But Ben Roethlisberger didn't play. He's going to be back on the field. Watt's going to be back. They're going to bring a lot of guys that sat out this past week for Pittsburgh. They used it as their de facto bye week, and I think once they get back onto the field, they're going to win. Cleveland. Here's what happens with Cleveland. If I think Baker Mayfield is such a strong personality, they sometimes like to see him throw the ball 30, 40 times and really have a big presence out there. That's not their best way to win. Run the ball with Chubb and Hunt because I think they may have the best. I think they have the best running back combo in the entire NFL. If they run the ball, safe passes for Mayfield, he could throw the ball down the field once in a while, keep things honest. But if they use ball control and do it that way, they'll have a much better chance. But I think he's going to have some bad turnovers in this contest against the Steelers, trying to do too much, and that ultimately is going to be the thing that hurts the Browns in the long run. And finally, the buys are for the AFC is Kansas City and the NFC is Green Bay. I would be surprised if it's not a Green Bay Kansas City Super Bowl. I don't see any. As the NFL, everyone is beatable, but I just don't see any of these other teams with a chance to. Now they're not. As I said, it's not invincible, but I find it very tough to see any of the AFC teams going to Kansas City and winning. That's the way things are going this year. Buffalo's intriguing, but I just don't see it. Same thing in the NFC. Tampa brings a lot of offense, defense. It's up and down. New Orleans going up to Green Bay. I think that's a tricky spot. And you're gonna say the Saints have a really good road record over the past few years. I don't know though. I just don't see that scenario happening. So, but I said you never get the top two, or you very rarely get the top two seeds in each conference, or the top seed in each conference making it to the Super Bowl in the same year. It rarely happens. But as I said, I just think it'll be very tough for Kansas City and Green Bay to be denied at this time of year. All right, we'll transition to the technical state of Georgia athletics. And here was our exclusive interview with Georgia State women's basketball coach Gene Hill on all things Panthers. All right, Sports Inquirer here with Coach Hill from Georgia State women's basketball. The team has had some games canceled. You had your series against Coastal Carolina this past weekend postponed due to COVID-19 related issues. It's all sports and all aspects of life are touched by it. How's the team doing health wise, physically and mentally? And how have you handled this latest news?
Everyone's doing well, health wise. Definitely appreciate you asking. Everyone's spirits are pretty good right now. As well as you can expect, ready to get back on the court and get going and fully practice and maybe playing and everything. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, how do you adjust? How do you adjust to it? Is there quarantining? Are you able to still speak with the players and go over film through video capabilities? How did you use just this past week off in essence?
Yeah, we're able to do some things. Obviously, just as we're on Zoom, Zoom has become a daily part of our lives now. I wish I owned stock in it before
Hmm.
and stuff. I never heard of it uh, 9 months ago, but now it's every day. So yeah, we're able to have team meetings on Zoom. We do film breakdown also over Zoom. We just want to try to make sure we do some things to keep the kids acclimated, to keep them busy, and keep them involved, and try to make it as normal as possible, even though you're doing a lot of things vital soon and stuff. But yeah, so we've even done some workouts on Zoom.
Okay. Last time you were on the court, you faced Chattanooga at home. You trailed by 23 points, but tied it up and able to get to overtime. You came up short in the OT session. But what do you take from that contest as you prepare to interconference play?
Well, it was our first time playing back to back, so that's one thing that's going to have to be important for us because the rest of the games are back to back here. So we have to make sure that we come prepared, ready to play, and come out at the beginning. I felt like we really just dug ourselves a hole, and we had to climb up out of it, and it took a lot of energy to do that. And luckily we was able to do it, but there at the end there in overtime wasn't able to make enough plays. So hopefully, what we could take out of this is that if we come out and play our style of game for 40 minutes, we could play with anyone and not have those lack of effort or focus there.
Yeah. Well, Taylor Halsadov had a big night for you, 22 points, 6 rebounds. We talked about her before earlier in the year, but she still looks like she's continued to develop into a big threat for you on both ends of the court.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, obviously, she was selected preseason all conference, so people know what type of potential she has, and we know that we've continued to try to push her and get her to, work and have that drive to play up to that potential consistently. We think she's still just scratching the surface of what she can do. So, you know, as she goes, and as she grows, I mean, I think the team is only going to grow also and just get better. So definitely happy with that performance, but I know what type of kid she is. She also wants to win, so she was disappointed not to get a win there. And so now we just got to put it all together.
And lastly, as you speak right now, you have two scheduled games against Troy, so it'll be your conference opener. How are preparations gone for that, and what will you have to do well to emerge with victories in two consecutive contests, as you mentioned earlier with the new schedule?
Well, a lot of the preparation has been, mental preparation, vital video on Zoom, and we just started doing some individual shooting. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get back on the court fully and be able to start having a full practice. But for us, mostly it's just about getting back in the flow of things and really excited to be able to get back on the court and open up Sun Belt, but we just have to come out ready to play for 40 minutes. That's the main thing we really talked about, and just coming out executing.
All right, and thanks for Coach Hill speaking with us. Looking forward to seeing that contest against Troy. Hopefully, to get back on the court. And so you've heard the interview, all the stuff that they've been going through, but hopefully they get back on the court and to get back to playing. Just all teams involved. We've already had some cancellations. Georgia Tech was supposed to play Notre Dame in men's basketball today. That got canceled or postponed due to COVID-related issues. Man, it's just you just want to see these guys, men and women, play in these contests. These athletes, they go through so much, and you just want them to be able to go out there and compete. So hopefully that takes place. Devonta Smith won the Heisman Trophy from the Alabama wide receiver, third receiver to ever do it. Last one since Desmond Howard back in the day in 1991 with Michigan. I think with the deserved victory for him. I thought that the Alabama vote would split three ways because you had Mac Jones, their quarterback. I think Harris, the running back, he's a very good runner as well. I thought the vote would be split a lot of ways, but they went with Smith, the best player, I think, on the best team. Trevor Lawrence, I think if he did not have his COVID-related issues and missing a few games, remember, this is pre-bowl game of all the votes coming in. But I think if he did not miss that Notre Dame game and then the subsequent contest after that, I think that would have been good for his Heisman candidacy. But he missed those contests. But Smith's been there throughout the entire year. When Waddle went down, the other star receiver, for Alabama, you thought, man, it's really going to hurt their offense. Not at all. Smith elevated himself to the best receiver in the game. And as I said, you saw so many great catches, return kicks. He did it all for that Alabama team. So he's really showed himself to be the best player in the college football season. So I have no shame, no issue with that at all. I'm just glad he didn't go with like the best running back or the best quarterback, especially on the quarterback side of things. I didn't have a podcast back then, but I've campaigned for a lot of guys. I remember Jarvis Jones from Georgia. I remember campaigning for him, and Ndamukong Suh when he was at Nebraska. I thought he was the best player in college football. Shoot, Orlando Pace back in the day with Ohio State in the 90s, when I thought he was maybe the best player in all of college football. And those guys, they made the final. They were kind of final 3 or 4, but I just didn't think that they would just go to the best quarterback or the best running back, and that's not right. So I'm glad that Devonta Smith was able to win the Heisman there. All right, that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to our broadcast. As always, go to our social media platforms, starting with Twitter and Instagram under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Go to Facebook and one of our 2 pages there, the Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer. And then finally, you can go to our other social media platforms to hear our show on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under the Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe.